Gene Simmons has never been one to fade quietly into the background. The Kiss frontman, now in his mid-70s, continues to generate headlines with the same intensity that once made him breathe fire on stage. But the stories emerging in recent years paint a far more complex picture than the cartoonish demon persona he cultivated for 5 decades. Behind the makeup and the merchandise empire lies a journey marked by survival, ambition, controversy, and a relentless drive that has both elevated and complicated his legacy. Born Chaim Witz in Haifa, Israel on August 25, 1949, Simmons entered a world still reeling from the Holocaust. His mother, Flora Klein, had survived Nazi concentration camps in Hungary, enduring forced labor and witnessing horrors that would shape her son's entire worldview. His father, Yehiel Witz, also escaped Hungary, and the couple married in 1946 before relocating to the newly forming state of Israel. But their marriage crumbled under financial strain when Gene was just 6 years old. His father stayed behind and eventually started a new family, someone Gene would never see again. Flora raised her son alone in Tiret Carmel, working exhausting shifts in factories, sewing buttons, just to keep them fed. Some nights, they survived on bread and milk alone. At 7 years old, young Chaim was already trying to contribute, picking wild fruit with friends and selling it by the roadside. He fashioned his first winter coat from an army blanket because there was no money for proper clothing. The experience of poverty became etched into his consciousness, creating a determination to never be poor again. School offered no refuge. Other children bullied him for being different, and even in post-war Israel, anti-Semitic attitudes persisted. But Chaim found escape in American comic books featuring Spider-Man and Superman. Though he couldn't yet read English, he taught himself the language through these stories, adding it to his already impressive repertoire of Hebrew, Hungarian, and Turkish. These heroes represented something he desperately wanted: power, recognition, and the ability to overcome any obstacle. In 1957, Flora made a life-altering decision. With barely any resources, she and 8-year-old Chaim immigrated to Queens, New York. They arrived with no money, no English fluency, and no family support system. Chaim became Eugene Klein and began adapting to American life, amazed by flush toilets and television dinners. Flora worked 15-hour days in Brooklyn factories, while Gene learned to navigate this strange new world largely on his own. The transition wasn't easy. His accent made him a target for teasing, and he struggled to fit in at both Jewish school and later public school. But rejection only fueled his determination. He sold cacti door to door, picked fruit, and absorbed American culture through television. In 1959, at just 9 years old, he legally changed his name to Gene Klein, inspired by cowboy actors like Gene Autry. He was committed to becoming fully American, even if that meant erasing parts of his past. Everything changed on February 9, 1964, when the Beatles appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. Watching those 4 young men command that stage ignited something profound in 14-year-old Gene. He wanted that life desperately: the fame, the adoration, the sense of being someone important. He even adopted a fake British accent to impress girls, copying the Beatles' speech patterns. His charm was developing, even if he still felt like an outsider looking in. Throughout the 1960s, Gene worked constantly. He sliced meat in butcher shops, worked deli counters, and earned just over $1 an hour, but he saved obsessively. Poverty had taught him to value every cent. Unlike his peers, he avoided alcohol at parties, staying sharp while others lost control. He later admitted this clarity gave him an advantage with women. He began learning guitar, practicing relentlessly after seeing the Beatles perform. Music wasn't just a hobby. It was his pathway to a different life. By 1968, Gene had enrolled at Sullivan County Community College, studying education and earning an associate degree by 1970. He even taught 6th grade in Spanish Harlem for $75 a week. But his heart belonged to music. He joined Paul Stanley in forming a band called Rainbow, which evolved into Wicked Lester in 1970. They played clubs at night while working day jobs. Gene even took translation gigs using his multilingual abilities and worked at a fashion magazine. Wicked Lester recorded a full album at Electric Lady Studios in October 1972, but their A&R director at Epic Records despised it. He called the sound too messy for radio and shelved the project permanently. The rejection devastated Gene, but it also liberated him. In January 1973, he and Paul Stanley decided to start completely fresh. They recruited Peter Criss through a Rolling Stone ad and found Ace Frehley via Village Voice. The four of them created something unprecedented, a theatrical rock spectacle featuring elaborate makeup, pyrotechnics, and larger-than-life personas. Their first show as Kiss took place on January 30th, 1973, at a small Queens club called the Coventry. Only 3 people attended, including girlfriends of band members. But that night, Gene breathed fire on stage for the first time, creating an unforgettable moment. They built their following slowly, through word of mouth and relentless touring, rather than radio play. Gene's demon character, inspired by horror films and comic books, became instantly recognizable. He painted bat wings around his eyes and performed with blood dripping from his mouth. Within 18 months, they were headlining major stadiums. Their makeup was so distinctive that it bypassed traditional music industry gatekeepers. Manager Bill Aucoin secured them a record deal with Casablanca Records in November 1973, and they released their debut album on February 18, 1974. Though initial sales were modest, they played over 300 shows that year, keeping both themselves and their nearly bankrupt record label alive through sheer determination. The breakthrough came on September 10, 1975, with the release of Alive, a live album that captured the raw energy of their performances. It went quadruple platinum, selling over 4 million copies and reaching number 9 on the Billboard charts. The album saved Casablanca Records from financial collapse and proved that their theatrical approach wasn't just a gimmick, but a revolution in rock performance. Suddenly, Kiss wasn't just strange, they were the future. Their 1976 album Destroyer, produced by Bob Ezrin, took their sound to new heights. Ezrin added orchestral strings, children's choirs, and complex sound effects. The album featured hits like Shout It Out Loud and Gene's ominous God of Thunder. But Ezrin was demanding, throwing out most of their initial demos and rewriting songs himself. He even played bass on Detroit Rock City because he wasn't satisfied with Gene's performance. The creative tension produced results, though, as Destroyer became one of their most successful albums. Behind the scenes, Gene was developing habits that would define and eventually tarnish his reputation. He began photographing his sexual encounters, requiring women to hold up hotel room keys in Polaroid shots. Over the years, he claimed to have accumulated nearly 5,000 such photos, boasting about sleeping with over 4,600 women. He showed these images to friends and guests, treating his conquests as trophies. Ray Slick from Jefferson Airplane reportedly found the practice disgusting, but Gene continued collecting evidence of his exploits. By the late 1970s, cracks were appearing in the band's foundation. Their 1979 album Dynasty incorporated disco influences, alienating rock purists. Peter Criss's drug problems worsened, and he began sabotaging shows by stopping mid-performance. The elaborate stage productions continued, with Gene flying across venues and Ace's guitar shooting rockets, but ticket sales were declining. Some venues sat half empty. The original magic was fading, and the band members were growing apart. In 1978, they made a bizarre career detour with a TV movie called Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, produced by Hanna-Barbera. The film cast them as superheroes battling an evil inventor at an amusement park. The acting was terrible, and fans hated it, but Gene loved the attention. That same year, all 4 members released solo albums simultaneously. Gene's outsold some of their actual band albums, featuring strange covers like When You Wish Upon a Star, with guest appearances from Cher and Bob Seger. The most dramatic moment came on September 18, 1983, when Kiss removed their makeup live on MTV after 10 years of mystery. They simultaneously released Lick It Up, which went platinum with a heavier, more aggressive sound. The gamble paid off as sales jumped and alienated fans returned. But more importantly, by this point Kiss had become a licensing juggernaut, with over 100 products generating millions in merchandise revenue. The masks were gone, but the business machine was stronger than ever. Gene's personal life became increasingly chaotic during this period. His sexual appetite disrupted band operations as he missed recording sessions and prioritized Hollywood appearances over rehearsals. His 2001 autobiography, Kiss and Makeup, revealed the full extent of his behavior, confirming he had slept with over 4,800 women during his time in the band. One particularly infamous episode involved dating Cher between 1979 and 1980, then falling for her best friend Diana Ross during a Christmas shopping trip. The resulting love triangle exploded across tabloids, and Cher reportedly never forgave either of them. Throughout this tumult, one relationship endured. Gene met Shannon Tweed at the Playboy Mansion in 1983. Shannon had been named Playmate of the Year in 1982 and entered the relationship, knowing Gene's reputation. Despite his ongoing affairs and refusal to commit, they had 2 children together, Nick in 1989 and Sophie in 1992. Gene often joked that marriage was a trap, quoting Groucho Marx, but Shannon stayed, building a life around his chaotic schedule and infidelities. The relationship reached its breaking point in 2011 when Shannon discovered Gene's collection of explicit Polaroids on their reality show Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, which ran from 2006 to 2012. She burned the photographs on camera in a moment that shocked viewers. The show, which became A&E's second biggest hit after Dog the Bounty Hunter, documented 7 years of their family life and exposed the pain beneath Gene's bravado. After a photo of Gene with 2 models at a 2009 Santa Monica event caused Shannon to temporarily leave, they entered therapy on camera. In a surprising turn, Gene proposed to Shannon in Belize on July 26, 2011, and they married on October 1st with their children serving as groomsmen and maid of honor. After 28 years of resistance, Gene finally committed. The wedding made headlines partly because it seemed so unlikely. During their therapy sessions captured on the show, Gene admitted his fear of commitment stemmed from childhood trauma, watching his parents' marriage collapse under poverty's weight. But controversy continued following Gene into the new millennium. In 2010, ESPN makeup artist Victoria Jackson sued him, claiming he behaved inappropriately during a 2009 appearance while in costume. Gene denied the allegations, even filing a countersuit, and the case was eventually settled. In 2016, a dishwasher at his Rock and Brews restaurant accused him of groping, followed by a similar claim from another woman in 2017. Both cases were quietly resolved by 2018, though Gene consistently dismissed the lawsuits as baseless. The pattern suggested a man who struggled with boundaries despite his wealth and fame. Gene's business empire expanded relentlessly. By the 2000s, the Kiss logo appeared on over 5,000 products, from pinball machines to coffins, generating over $1 billion in sales. In 2012, he and Paul Stanley launched the Rock and Brews restaurant chain,